Yes, hello, this is Sussex Murphy here, and I'm here to introduce the man of the hour, Cousin Furphy, with his third episode of Furphy's Favourites. Yes. Well, thank you very much, Sussex, for that lovely little intro there. And here we are with episode 3 of Furphy's Favourites. So I thought it was appropriate that we would do a couple of bands that have 3 members, because it's episode 3. So anyway, here we go. Okay, Furphy, so what can you tell us about the first band that you want to talk about today? Well, the first band I wish to talk about today is called Dickensian Sewerage. Most people, when they think of grunge, they think of the Seattle scene in America. Obviously, that's where Seattle is, I believe. And, well, actually, no. There was a band in 1973 called Dickensian Sewerage, and I think you can say that Nirvana definitely borrowed quite a lot from Dickensian Sewerage, formed in Yorkshire. Now, yes, they never really broke out of the Yorkshire scene, but within that area in 1973, they did have quite the hit with I Was in a Bucket. Now, Dickensian Sewerage were a rather unusual group, what with the fact that they were all older gentlemen at the time. Their lead singer, Freddie Goebbels, was close to 80. I think he was about 78 at the time. Was something of the local eccentric in the Yorkshire area, and was just sort of known to sort of go around rambling off random phrases. And I think in the sort of late 60s, when the sort of psychedelic thing was happening, this kind of took off with a few of the locals, and so a band just kind of formed around him. Now, he already knew how to play guitar a little bit. He'd been in folk groups in the 50s and early 60s, and by this point he was just this sort of a crazy, eccentric old man that wandered around Yorkshire saying random things. Eventually, somewhere in Wakefield, he would run into his songwriting partner, Edward Ian Dandy, and he would also become the bass player in the group. And while they were about to record some demos, they ran into this homeless chappie who was just sort of banging on some tins out in the street. And they thought, well, we can't just have him banging on things out in the street. Let's invite him in, and he became the band's drummer. And he became the legendary Jimmy Bookcase.
I was in a bucket. Huh? Yeah. I don't know.
Now, the band didn't last for long. Unfortunately, Freddie wasn't long for this world, and didn't sort of live much longer beyond 1973. So this was sort of his last hurrah, really. He'd had a rather interesting life before this. He'd fought in World War I, he'd fought in World War II, he'd worked as an apprentice cobbler for a few years, so he'd had a lot of sort of unusual experiences. But yes, very unusual man, and I think that, like I said earlier, Nirvana certainly owe this band a lot of credit. Well, that's very interesting. I can't say I'd ever heard of them before. I'd be interested to hear more if there is actually more out there. Often with the artists you talk about, Furphy, there's not a lot of recordings left. Yes, unfortunately, this one clip was all I could find. Hopefully there is more out there. And, yes. Okay, so what else have you got for us this week, Furphy? Well, the other band that I wish to talk about today, we've just talked about a grunge pioneer. I thought, why not talk about an emo pioneer? In fact, I'm pretty sure they were the first emo group. This time they're from America. They formed in Florida in 1991, and they're called Panic Station. Now, Panic Station were well ahead of the curve on a lot of things, including technology, and a lot of people know the emo music was quite, the artists were quite fond of using the auto-tune technology. This was still quite in its infancy at the time, and so it didn't always go well. So we do have a live recording here, and they were actually using the live auto-tune. This was about 1993, and it didn't quite work out for them. It does sound a little bit unusual, but it gives you a bit of an idea of that early auto-tuned punk pop vocal sound.
I'm looking to deal with the bullshit of the politics behind that. There is. I've got a wife. I've got 3 kids in a room, and I really don't need this shit.
Now, Panic Station would release one album, A Simple Disco, in 1994, but it didn't really get anywhere. I don't think people were ready for that kind of thing. If they'd formed maybe 10 years later, they would have been quite popular. And so the lead singer, Steve Rington, would go on to invent the ringtone for mobile phones. He got quite involved in technology and was the first person to commercially sell ringtones. So, yes, a rather good story for him in the end. The rest of the band would go on and form an ABBA tribute group. It didn't go too well because they couldn't get any girls to play Agneta and Frida, so it was really just them playing instrumental versions of ABBA songs. It didn't go well. So after that, they both went into accounting, which is quite an unusual sort of turn from being in an emo group, but I believe they do quite well for themselves, so financially I'm sure they're all right, but yes. Anyway, that's Furphy's favourite for this particular time. I'm sure you'll see me again on a Murph chat, or maybe we'll do another Murphy Furphy Tips theatre thing at some point. Yes, I'll show up on other videos, and eventually I'll do another one of these. Thank you for watching. Oh, and don't forget our sponsor, Home for the LD Lee. And we have to also tell you something. Yes, that is correct. They're no longer selling HD DVDs. It is just Laserdiscs. But they still sell all of the peripheries and things like that that you need to play Laserdiscs. So if you're into Laserdiscs, check out Home for the LD Lee. Yes, so anyway, that's our show for this time. Thank you for watching. I'm Cousin Furphy. I'm Sussex Murphy. And thank you.